authorities in Illinois are once again under the microscope, as the chilling murder of 7-year-old Nathaniel Burton, killed by his own mother after months of warning, since raises profound questions about institutional failure, psychological decline, and a system that repeatedly missed opportunities to save a child who all but predicted his own death. It is a case that has stunned even seasoned investigators, not only for the brutality of the crime, but for the disturbing clarity with which the little boy anticipated his fate, telling his grandmother multiple times, "Mama is going to kill me." Long before his final moments on February 17, 2021, his voice, preserved through court documents, interviews, and testimony, now echoes as a haunting indictment of the agencies that were supposed to protect him. Understanding what happened to Nathaniel requires looking beyond the immediate facts of his death and examining the slow collapse of oversight, the psychological unraveling of his mother, Sarah Safranek, and the systemic failures that allowed a child to fall through every available safety net. This is not merely the story of a homicide. It is the chronicle of a preventable tragedy, one that unfolded in plain sight. Prosecutors have described Sarah Safranek, now 38 and serving a 35-year sentence, as a woman consumed by violent ideation, self-pity, and a growing fascination with death. Her internet searches all entered months before and on the day she killed her son read like the internal monologue of someone spiraling into darkness. She searched for ways to kill someone quickly for the cost of cremating a child, for the meaning of maternal obsession with killing one's own offspring. She sought out articles on poisons, on how investigations unfold after a child dies, and even looked up notorious murder cases like Scott and Lacey Peterson. She Googled, "What is it called when a parent is obsessed with the thought of killing their child?" as if she were trying to diagnose her own unraveling mind. By the time she suffocated Nathaniel with a level of force and duration that medical examiners called sustained and intentional, any line between intrusive thoughts and violent action had already dissolved. But the critical question, the one investigators, journalists, and grieving family members continue to ask us, how Sarah was able to harm her son repeatedly without intervention. The Illinois Department of Children and Family Services visited her home around a dozen times in 2 years, each time closing the case with no findings of wrongdoing. Those visits, now heavily scrutinized, have become emblematic of a broader problem: repeated contact without meaningful intervention. In death, Nathaniel became the most tragic evidence of what those missed opportunities cost. The earliest warnings came from the boy himself. According to his paternal grandmother, Nathaniel confided in her multiple times that his mother held pillows and couch cushions over his head, sometimes while he played and sometimes while he slept. He described waking up with her hands pressing the pillow down, fighting to breathe, trying to escape. "I can't breathe, Grandma. She won't let me breathe," he told her. These were not isolated incidents or vague claims. They were coherent descriptions of repeated attempts on his life. His maternal grandmother, too, reported similar statements, Nathaniel telling her his mother tried drowning him in a bathtub. His fear of being suffocated, prosecutors said, was constant. The consistency of these statements is what troubles child welfare experts the most. When a child repeatedly describes attempts to suffocate him, when he articulates anxiety, fear, and specific acts of harm, it is typically treated as a major red flag requiring immediate protective action. But in this case, the pattern was dismissed again and again. That remains a central point of inquiry. Safranek's home life, according to investigators, had all the outward signs of a household in crisis. There were reports of domestic instability, allegations of emotional volatility, and school officials had previously logged concerns about the children's well-being. Yet DCFS visits resulted in no findings, no protective orders, no emergency placements, no sustained follow-up. What's more damning is that Nathaniel had already spent several months living with foster parents when he was 5. During that time, he also told them about similar abusive incidents. His foster mother recalled a chilling episode. He said he was kneeling by the couch playing with toy cars when Safranek threw a cushion over him, sat on it, and refused to get off. He described being trapped beneath her weight, struggling for air. His foster parents reported this behavior, but without witnessing it firsthand. Their concerns were logged but did not result in long-term removal. That decision returning him to the very environment he feared became fatal. On February 17, 2021, the simmering danger reached its horrifying climax. In the home on South 10th Street in Oregon, Illinois, Safranek carried out the act she had researched, rehearsed, and seemed increasingly fixated on for months. Prosecutors say the suffocation was deliberate, forceful, and prolonged. The boy was hospitalized but died the next day. When investigators searched Safranek's digital history, what they found confirmed their worst fears. This was not a crime of sudden rage or isolated impulse. It was premeditated psychological deterioration leading toward an inevitable conclusion. Every step meticulously recorded in her search bar. Her journal entries, too, contained disturbing admissions that she hurts her kids, documenting the escalating crisis she seemed unable or unwilling to control. The tragedy deepens when one considers the broader psychological framework surrounding filicide, particularly filicide driven by what experts call fatal maternal ideation, where a parent becomes fixated on harming a child as an extension of internal distress, psychosis, or distorted beliefs. Many such cases reveal patterns of untreated mental illness, isolation, or delusional thinking. Prosecutors did not argue insanity in this case, but they did present evidence of obsessive ideation, emotional dysregulation, and an alarming pattern of intrusive, violent thoughts that were never adequately addressed by mental health professionals or authorities. From a systems perspective, this case raises critical questions about DCFS procedures. When a child reports suffocation attempts, how should the system weigh such claims? Should multiple reports from relatives regarding the same type of abuse trigger automatic deeper investigation or temporary removal? Should there be mandatory psychological evaluation for parents when persistent danger signals emerge? These questions remain unresolved. But Nathaniel's death has renewed pressure on Illinois lawmakers and the child welfare system to confront its shortcomings. The case also highlights the complexities of evaluating risk in family dynamics. While Safranek had a documented history of instability, she did not present the traditional indicators of severe violent behavior. She was not known for drug abuse. There was no history of violent crime. She was not considered an imminent threat until she was. And by then, the consequences were irreversible, as more details emerged through court proceedings. A narrative began to form of a mother consumed by hopelessness and resentment, overwhelmed by responsibilities she felt ill-equipped to handle, and increasingly disconnected from reality. But even as the defense suggested emotional instability, the prosecution emphasized agency. She researched, planned, anticipated, and executed the killing of her child. Whatever psychological factors were at play, they argued, she knew what she was doing. Her initial guilty plea in March 2024, followed by a withdrawal and later reinstated plea, reflected a complicated legal trajectory. Procedural appeals, judicial turnover, and shifting strategies delayed the trial, prolonging the family's grief and public scrutiny. But ultimately, the plea was accepted, and the 35-year sentence was handed down with explicit conditions. She must serve the entire term before supervised release is even considered. For Nathaniel's family, his siblings, grandparents, and former foster parents, justice feels partial at best. Their grief is compounded by anger, directed not only at Safranek, but at the institutions that failed him. His sister described witnessing her mother choking him, hitting him with a belt. She recounted moments of fear, confusion, and helplessness. His grandparents reported their concerns multiple times. His foster parents did too. But the system's response to episodic check-ins without protective action proved tragically insufficient. In reflecting on this case, child advocacy experts emphasize the importance of listening to children, especially when they speak about fear, harm, or danger. Children may lack the language to articulate technical details, but they often express truth in the most direct terms possible. When a child repeatedly says, "My mom is going to kill me," that alone should demand immediate intervention. The story of Nathaniel. Burton is a sobering reminder of the fragile line dividing safety and tragedy, particularly for children at risk. It exposes the systemic blind spots that allow warning signs to accumulate unnoticed or unaddressed. It forces a reckoning with the reality that child protective services, while crucial, are often under-resourced, overburdened, and sometimes inconsistent in their assessments. But beyond the legal, institutional, and psychological layers, this is a profoundly human tragedy story of a boy who tried to speak up and was not heard in time. A boy who sensed danger long before adults recognized it. A boy who deserved more than the slow response bureaucracy that failed to protect him. In the end, the most haunting aspect of this case is not only how Nathaniel died, but how clearly he foresaw what was coming. His voice repeated in court documents and echoed by relatives is the lingering shadow over this case. "Mama is going to kill me." Those words ignored in life. Now define the narrative of his death, as Illinois reviews the failures that led to this outcome. As advocates push for reforms and as policymakers debate the future of child welfare oversight, one truth remains unavoidable. This tragedy was preventable, and unless the lessons are taken seriously, less. Warnings from children are treated not as noise, but as alarms. Similar tragedies may unfold again. For now, Nathaniel's story stands as both a memorial and a warning, a reminder that institutions are only as effective as their willingness to act upon the voices of the most vulnerable. And as the community continues to grapple with the sorrow of his loss, the central question persists: how many times must a child cry out before someone listens?